Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to my series on Bobby Fischer's Seminal Work, My 60 Memorable Games. In this video, we'll be analyzing game number 36 that Fischer played versus Viktor Korchnoi in Stockholm, 1962. We've got an epic encounter in the Ruy Lopez coming up. Before we jump in, don't forget, smash that subscribe button. Join Team MVP. Thank you so much for your support. So, Korchnoi, arguably the greatest player to never become world champion. He competed in the Candidates Tournament 10 times. He also faced Anatoly Karpov in the World Championship twice, not including 1974 in the Candidates Tournament final, which would become the de facto World Championship match because our main man, Bobby Fischer, decided not to defend his title in 1975, so Karpov was given the title. So, Fischer, with the white pieces, plays pawn to e4, best by test, of course. And we have a Spanish on the board. Both players developing normally. Okay, Fischer plays rook e1, so he's threatening bishop takes c6, followed by knight takes e5, so Korchnoi plays b5. Castles, pawn to c3. Very important move in the Spanish, giving the bishop a retreat square and also preparing the key central break, pawn to d4. After d6, Fischer decides to play d4 in one move. Usually, white prepares this move by playing pawn to h3 first, because allowing bishop g4 does put more pressure on the white center. Bishop e3, knight a5, after the capture on d4, hitting this bishop on b3. So Fischer, of course, does not want to part with the Spanish bishop. He plays bishop c2, knight c4, hitting b2 and the dark square bishop, so Fischer retreats this bishop to c1. So this knight has gotten some activity, but this is only temporary because after c5, which is black's key break in these structures, Fischer kicks the knight back to a5 and then plays d5 to deprive it of the c6 square. Really instructive play by Fischer, really playing against one of black's problem pieces in all e4, e5 openings, the queen's knight. I really like that play. We have knight d7, eyeballing the e5 square. Fischer connects to the knights. And after bishop f6, Korchnoi is employing a dark square strategy on the queen side. We have pawn to c4, h3, Fischer bags the two bishop, always a really nice positional edge to get. But now we see Korchnoi's idea. After this capture, he plays queen c7. Okay, he's really banking on the control over the dark squares in white's position to generate some counterplay and to create some nice active squares for his pieces. So we have bishop e3, redeveloping the bishop, and b4. So Korchnoi's definitely made some progress on the queen side. Fischer is going to look to play on the king side, and he starts by the classic Ruy Lopez maneuver. Okay, well, I suppose the most classic maneuver is knight bd2 to f1, but what I'm referring to is landing a knight on the f5 square. Okay, this is also true in the Italian. This is white's key attacking idea in these structures. So definitely look to land your knight on the key f5 square. Korchnoi tries to improve this sad donkey on the side of the board, so knight b7. And Fischer starts his attack on the king side, which provokes a weakness. Pawn to g6. He gives a check, displacing the king to the f8 square. Now, Fischer's made some inroads on the king side, but there's no breakthrough yet. So he decides to open the second front. And he decides to turn Korchnoi's queenside play against him and pivot to an attack on the c file. Okay? Instructive play by Fischer. Rook c8, bishop d3. Korchnoi steps off the dangerous c file, and Fischer brings the other rook to the c file. Nice instructive play, putting a lot of pressure on this entrenched dark square bishop. Knight e5, attacking the light squared bishop, which of course Fischer preserves by playing bishop f1. But notice Korchnoi is very active on the dark squares. We have knight c5, which is a temporary pawn sacrifice by Korchnoi. Fischer accepts, but we notice after king g7 and this exchange that Korchnoi has very good pressure against Fischer's pawns. One of them is going to fall, so Korchnoi is going to be able to regain his invested material. So in this position, Fischer decides to pivot back to the king side and start keeping dynamic attacking chances alive. White does not have much, and Fischer admits he really never had much in this whole game, but he's just trying to keep Korchnoi under pressure. And this has been effective because at this stage in the game, Korchnoi is starting to fall behind on the clock and get into time pressure. So let's see what happens. Knight f3, rook f3, and then knight takes e4. Korchnoi regains his lost pawn, but then notice Fischer counterattacks the f7 pawn, and Korchnoi decides to play pawn to f5. Now, Korchnoi was critical of this move. His comments are actually interwoven with Fischer's annotations in the book. He thought this was really weakening on the king side, but Fischer said, yeah, optically, but there's really not much. There's no way for white to attack. I bet you this was a pretty frustrating position for Fischer to play, but he had a strong will to win, and he just kept pressing. So this is really instructive play, especially psychologically from Fischer, that we can all employ in our games. Rook e3. Okay. There's not much doing on the f-file anymore after f5, so Fischer finds a new home for this rook and then decides to start pressuring Korchnoi's weak pawns. Okay, again, white does not have much here, but this has been a war of attrition. Okay, Fischer just constantly pressing, keeping Korchnoi under pressure. At this point, Korchnoi says in his own annotations that he was very far behind on the clock, very short of time, and this prompted him to make a mistake with rook b8. So I'll turn it over to you in this position. White to play. Fischer has nice pressure on the d6 pawn and also on the a6 pawn. My question to you is, can Fischer safely capture this pawn on d6? This is the one that he really wants to capture right now because he has dreams of advancing this d pawn up the board to win the game. So pause your videos and have a think. Can Fischer capture on d6? So congratulations if you said, yes, he can. Rook takes d6 works. If there's a key idea you want to play, it looks like your opponent is preventing it, always ask yourself, what happens if I play it anyway? Of course, the tactical point being, and this wasn't the game continuation, but if the knight were to capture here, now this rook on e5 would be on prise. So that's why Korchnoi played queen a1 in this position, looking for activity, but this was another mistake, again, provoked by time pressure. It would have been much better for Korchnoi to play g5 in this position, looking to complicate matters on the king side, but queen a1 just drops another pawn. Rook a6. Fischer has two passers on the queen side now and is in the driver's seat. After queen d4, Fischer gets his rook behind the pass pawn. That's where you want the rooks. And after queen b2, just starts pushing the d pawn up the board. Pawn to g5. Fischer just ducks the queen back, and after f4, Fischer's next move, queen a7, prompted Korchnoi to resign. So, why did Korchnoi resign in this position? Well, the king is in check, so let's say king f8. There would follow d7, an attack on the rook, and if Korchnoi were to defend with the king, trying to blockade the passed pawn, Fischer would have a great tactic in this position. I will turn it over to you for the last time. White to play. What would be Fischer's winning move in this position? Pause your videos. So congratulations if you found The awesome queen sacrifice. Queen takes d8. Boom. That would have been a great move. King takes d8 and rook a8. The passer would be going through. Let's leave queen a7 as the final position. Great game by Fischer. And really, as I said before, it was a war of attrition. He really never had much during this game, but he kept Korchnoi under pressure, put him behind on the clock, and eventually he cracked. So this is something that we can all do in our games, especially against lower rated players, okay? Especially against players that maybe spam you with draws. Keep them under pressure, okay? Keep probing for weaknesses. Try to get them behind on the clock, and eventually even somebody as strong as Korchnoi succumb to the pressure. So I hope you enjoyed this analysis. Don't forget, smash that subscribe button. Join Team MVP. You're not going to want to miss my next installment, which is going to be Game 37, if you can believe it. We're getting there. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.